Hi, everyone, and welcome to Wholesale Change, the webcast and podcast from Distribution Strategy Group, where we offer thought leadership for wholesale change agents like you. And when it comes to thought leadership, have we got a doozy of a show today. My name's Ian Heller. I'll be your co-host along with my business partner. He is to distributors CX what Steph Curry is to being a point guard. Jonathan Bein, PhD. Jonathan, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Ian. Always a pleasure to work with you. Always a pleasure to receive the flattery, but I always need to return it to you because anything good I learned about distribution, anything good I learned about marketing and strategy, I learned from you.
Nah, we've achieved equilibrium, man. I'm learning as much from you. And we're seeing all kinds of things out there that you're explaining to me these days. So, hey, we've got a fantastic show today. We're really, really excited to introduce you. If you don't already know him, to Tony Harris. Well, let me just say, if you're joining us today, you're in for a special treat. So before we get started, we have to thank our sponsor, without whom this show would not be possible, because today's podcast is sponsored by Epicor, a company that has been helping thousands of wholesale distributors integrate all their business functions into one enterprise resource planning or ERP system for over 50 years. Because of their deep experience in the distribution business and your unique distribution challenges, their ERP solutions were designed with distributors for distributors. That just means that their solutions are built specifically with the right functionality for the distribution world. They're ready to use out of the box without complex and expensive customizations. It's one of the top reasons new customers tell Epicor they selected Epicor for distribution solutions over others. You can learn more about Epicor at epicor.com/distribution. That's epicor.com/distribution. Now we're delighted to welcome to the show Mr. Tony Harris. He's currently the CEO and founder of ThincB2B. Tony, thank you so much for joining us on the Wholesale Change Show.
Oh, Ian, thank you so much. It's an absolute pleasure. Jonathan, as always, it's wonderful to see you. I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to join you today and be able to talk a little bit more about what I think about distribution and where the future's going.
So, Tony,
go ahead, Jonathan.
You've got a phone number that starts with 612, which is in Minneapolis, where maybe they're getting all that snow, but you live in the 619, which is San Diego.
Yes.
La Jolla.
I see what you did there.
It's the two-step boogie. So, so I do have offices in Minneapolis and Edina, and I continue to spend time in Minneapolis because I am on a number of boards and companies that I'm involved in the portfolio. But yes, the operations are here in wonderful La Jolla, just off the ocean, and 20-minute drive to the airport, where I spend a lot of time.
Yeah. So, I always put together a bio page, just, some bullet points for our guests. And I couldn't actually fit everything on just the stuff that you're doing right now, Tony. And so okay. I'm wondering, are you still wasting those precious hours between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. on sleep? Because you can't be wasting any more than that with everything you have going on.
No. You must get to bed by 11 o'clock every night. You have to be up by 2 in the morning. Your first meeting must be at 3:30 to 4 a.m. because you are on the West Coast.
Oh, yeah.
New York is on their second cup of coffee by 6 a.m. So things get started pretty early here.
So tell us what you're up to these days. So, I mean, you were the CMO at DigiKey Electronics at one point in time for 9 years, which is one of the most, look at that. Jonathan's holding up the catalog.
Whoa. Is that autographed?
It might be the last one that was ever produced, because when I was in a period of collecting catalogs, and I called somebody at DigiKey, and I really had to press hard to get a print copy. So this might have been like from the last tree that was cut down that printed the last DigiKey catalog.
Oh my gosh! Well, I tell you, it was a wonderful, wonderful catalog. Roughly 2,000 plus pages. Each page individually customized. It's fantastic. I started ThincB2B with the whole focus on helping companies grow in an exuberant fashion, right? So ThincB2B's focus is, if I 80-20 the business, 80% of ThincB2B advisory's time is helping CEOs and their boards make better decisions. from a distribution manufacturing standpoint. 20% of my time may be spent tactically involved in various executions, also could be acquisitions, all could be a number of other things, but a tiny bit of retail. Because there are some things that B2B does get really right, that B2C or direct to consumer is really curious about. And so I'm often asked, hey, if B2B does it this way, are there elements of it that can, translate over to what we're doing on the D2C side? So I think B2B's hard focus is helping distribution, manufacturing really execute well, make better decisions, and hyper grow their companies. That's what I do.
Yeah, it sounds like fascinating work. And you're also a partner at Intelligentix, right?
Yes. So when I think about ThincB2B and how I go to market, I actually have a U.S. trademark and patent office process. It's actually trademarked on how I help companies hyper grow. And the most important part of this is understanding the customer's expectations, understanding what the customer really wants before you actually go and design something. And when I say design it, it might be a sales strategy, an ops strategy, your internet or e-commerce strategy should all be built around what the customer wants. So I was always bringing Intelligentix to the table to say, hey, I have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. I want to listen. I want to understand what the customer wants before we make recommendations on what to have a client do. So Intelligentix was a natural acquisition path for me, because it was, how do we take voice of the customer, user experience studies first, and then apply them to, here are the strategies that you need to grow your gross profit and your net new customer count. And how do you grow customers to look like your best customers? So the intelligence is what drives the tactics, which is what Intelligentix means. It's when intelligence and tactics meet, thus the name.
So
I love it.
Can you give us an example of the kind of information that you gather? What is the kind of intelligence that you're gathering? First of all, I love that name as well. That then leads to these better tactics and better outcomes.
Yeah, that's a great question, Jonathan. So let's break it into kind of a bifurcated model. You have, let's say it's the website versus actual customer engagement user experience. So when you're looking at the website, and let's say you're a distributor making some thoughts, having thoughts around, it's time to dust off our site, make a number of adjustments, make a number of changes. You've got marketing and other areas of the business, communicating that the site is not as active as it should be, and traffic has been waning, and we're seeing a lot of jump off the site. So what you do is you bring in an Intelligentix, for instance, and they would conduct individual interviews, not just simply let's put a feedback click on the site to say, okay, tell us what you think. That's a sleepy way of getting answers. It's also not very accurate. But with a really good voice of the customer study and a really good user experience study, where you physically have a conversation with various customer segments. And so we all think alike around this 80-20 principle, right? The Pareto principle is 20% of your customers are going to drive 80% of your profit. I'm interested in profit. So what you do is you cherry pick that 20% and say, of those that are driving 80% of our profit, what do you care about? What are the things about our site experience that are great? And what are the things that are lacking? Ask those questions first. So they might be interviews, they might be surveys. You bring all of this information together, and now you have a great picture of what the customer cares about before you've even gone and started developing a roadmap for change. That is such a wonderful advantage. But another piece of that is when you start to add in kind of the voice of the customer around their brand study. Why choose me? If I'm a distributor, what is it about me compared to 5 of my competitors? And if you don't choose me, please tell me why. Or if you like all 5 of us, tell me why. And so once we ask those questions, and I always say, in absence of data, it's only an opinion.
Yeah.
And oftentimes It's the hippo's opinion. Do you guys know what the hippo is? It's the
Biggest
highest paid person's opinion.
Yeah, right,
So
right.
a lot of sites, a lot of decisions are based upon the hippo's gut check. We want to use data and maybe just a little bit of gut check to say, here's how we need to create a different experience for that customer so they're sticky.
So if I think about some similar data-driven things in the consumer world, the whole casino world is an example of they are able to successfully identify the high rollers,
Yes.
right? The ones they make profit with, the net promoters, if you will. They're able to understand what they need, and then they cater to them. And they get very focused on those high rollers rather than the other 90% of their customer base.
Great example, Jonathan. So I guess we have, in the distribution world, we have to have a casino mindset, right? We have to think like a casino operator in a sense that we want the top of the funnel. We want all the prospecting in the world. We're still trying to shake hands with everyone that walks through the door, but then we're going to be very mindful about as they disperse through the site, through the business, through the casino, we want to watch the behaviors. And based upon those behaviors, we'll start to cherry pick, well, do they become retained? Do we give them a game card and have them stay? Is there something we need to do to get them to stay? And then we want to move into protection. In the casino business, protection simply means you get a private suite, you get a docent to walk around with you, we got you covered. It's a very similar mindset. So distribution has to kind of think about that model as those customers engage with their brand.
And I think continuing the analogy, what you said was identifying what my best customers look like. So when you have a high roller, you know it's a high roller. But when you look at the sea of prospects, you have an ability early on to identify somebody who could become a high roller, right?
Exactly. So this is an area where, some distributors have really gotten a good grasp of this, and others are still moving through that process. But you hear that phrase data lake. Do you have a data lake? Do you have a marketing database warehouse? Do you have a place where you keep all the people that come and flock to your door? It's essential for distributors and even manufacturers that sell direct to have a data lake, an environment where all of this insight sits. So then you can parse the data and start to say, these 20 customers look more like my best customers. Let's start from a marketing standpoint, treating them differently. Let's see what we can do to move them and cajole them and get them to become more of our high GP and frequency customer types. Now, that doesn't mean you stop looking at those that are once and done. You just work, you actually create much more automated processes to keep them coming back. But once you get them into that protection mode, you can afford the friction to keep them there.
Beautiful. Now, we've talked a lot, and I know you are a giant and maven on the whole SEO, SEM world, and I'm sure our listeners are interested in the SEO, SEM world. But what you talk about is SOS.
Yes.
And tell us why that's getting more of your attention, and why and how that's getting more attention than the SEO, SEM.
Thanks so much, Jonathan. So I think for all those that are participating in the podcast, I think it's important. We have all the wonderful acronyms, right? We have to put them in our quarterly planning. Search engine marketing, our SEM, what are we doing? How much are we spending? What's our ROAS? I have worked with companies that are getting 17-to-1 ROAS, and marketing is screaming at them, hey, can you tighten that down? Can we, get it down to 11? Because I think we're missing some things. You have SEO, obviously. It's what you do to your site to improve that experience so that it gets crawled and then you can not be on page 8 of Google. We can finally get you to page 1. But the one area where a lot of distributors and manufacturers that also sell direct are not focusing on is what I often call a Tonyism, an SOS, which is search on site. It's search on site. When you get to your website and you see that search box, how are you studying that search box? What people are putting in it, at what frequency, what SKUs, what information. You would be surprised at how much data just lives in that little rectangular box on your site. Once you mine that information, you'll start to learn customer behavior fairly quickly. The frequency of what they're putting in there, you'll start to see why they're putting it in there and what they're putting in there. What SKUs are really really showing positive traction with you. You compare that to what's happening with your external traffic search, and now you've got a nice viewpoint of, hey, here are the things we should stock. Here's how we should be managing our price. Here are the things that customers care the most about, because when they hit that search box, this is what they're putting in it. So search on-site intelligence. And when I think of the future of search on-site is really having a team deployed either internally or externally to optimize your search. I mean, and it's not just, oh, we have recommendations. It's a recommendation engine. It's an add-on to the site. This is one level up. You're making recommendations post what a customer has done. They get to the site, they can't recommend something because you haven't done anything yet. You get to the search box, you type in a part number, or you type in some information or some detail. I can't recommend anything yet because you haven't done anything. This is the area to capture. So the first step is understand site search on the site, SOS. Then as they go through the customer journey, you can start to recommend things, not only based upon what they're shopping for, but based on what they're putting on that search box.
And you're going past just the click path stuff.
Yes. Yes. Another area that I think kind of ties into this search activity is user experience, right? So a dusty site will drive traffic away. That's what I always say. So keep the site fresh, keep the content fresh. Oftentimes people want to, monkey around with the search box or move certain things elsewhere. Make sure you ask the customer first before you do that. The future that I see are one company that's doing a really good job of it. And then what I see in the future is what I call, what we might call just search agents. So imagine in the future, if you're a registered user, you're actually granted an AI search agent. And a search agent will actually help you traverse a site to actually help you load your cart. You can ask them questions and they're only focused on you. If you have a site like someone like a DK, like a DigiKey or a Ranger or others that are really robust, and there's a lot of content, there's a lot of SKUs, having a digital search agent to help you traverse that environment so that you can get in and out on your purchase quickly or load up BOM or any of these things, that's going to be the future. But also understanding customer behavior on the site. Someone that does a really good job of this is Partstown. Partstown is an amazing brand. I've been wonderfully thankful to have an opportunity to work with that team in the past. And one of the things that you should take a look at on their homepage is a little red box. It looks like it has a little smile on it, but it's their real live, active voice of the customer. So when you click on it, it actually lets you change or recommend different areas of the site, the entire site, real time. So if you want to change something with categories, you can just make a recommendation. If you hover over something around the search box, you can make a recommendation. That's the future. So the future is going to be, in my mindset, having search agents, especially for very complex searches, and having real-time voice of customer on site.
Hey, real quick, Jonathan, just before you go on. So Steve Snower, who's the owner and CEO of Partstown, he worked for me at Newark Electronics. It was only for 2 years. It was more than 20 years ago, but I think clearly that exposure for him is what drove the rest of his successful career.
Absolutely. He's called the chief. I'm gonna say absolutely for you again.
Yeah. Actually, he had to recover from that experience. Steve probably spent 3 years recovering from that experience to get his career back on track again. But I can tell you, he's a brilliant thinker, and it's been really fun to watch him do so well with Partstown, because I agree with you, he's built an amazing company. Amazing group of people. And one of the things I want to make sure to mention is something that is quite intuitive to him.
is innovation. He requires innovation in the company. And
Really?
I'm sure there's a few numbers of innovative things that they have to do annually. And one thing that I do with clients is I remind them, no matter what the economy is doing, no matter what the business is doing, please target 2 or 3 innovations to your business. If they have to be to scale, that's fine. The minute you stop innovating, or at least thinking about, let's do 1 or 2 things that can move our needle, or give our customers something, or give our brand or manufacturer something different and unique that can help us grow business, they should be thinking about it. I think in distribution, we get heads down, pick, pack, ship, induction, we do business, we drop it out, we're good. Innovate, 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 never stop.
So Tony, one of the things that Ian and I have spoken about on probably a couple of these shows is what we're seeing in e-commerce, which is there are sectors or businesses where there's a lot going through the shopping cart. And there are sectors or businesses where there's a lot of shopping, research, evaluating, assessing, but it's not going through the shopping cart. It's coming through EDI, it's coming through Punch Out, it's coming through Connexium. So we've come to an analogy, and I want to put this out to you. By the way, full disclosure, before I do this analogy, Tony, did you get a scholarship offer to Nebraska back in the day?
Oh, we're going to have conversations about the shoebox filled with offers.
Okay, so one of the offers was Nebraska when Nebraska mattered. So let's just establish that baseline.
Wow.
But our analogy for this phenomenon of shopping on the site and then buying, perhaps on the site, perhaps some other way, is with a point guard in basketball. A point guard's job is to generate points. The point guard has 2 ways they do that. They can shoot or they can pass. And so when we look at 2 different models of point guard, Chris Paul would be a traditional point guard, pass first, shoot second. Steph Curry would be a more modern shoot first, pass second.
Yes.
Guess what? Their points created on average for life in their careers are within 1/10 of a point. Steph is 37.2 points created per game, passes and shooting. Chris Paul is 37.1. So bringing it back to distribution, Jansan is a Steph Curry model. There's a lot going through the shopping cart. It's not pass first, right?
Right.
The DigiKey model was a shopping cart, highly shopping cart intensive model, right? It was going through there. But we've looked at other industries like electrical. We can't tell you the number of electrical distributors of size and merit who are getting less than 1% shopping cart revenue, who view the initiative as a failure because they're measuring it only by shopping cart revenue.
Right.
So this is a long-winded introduction to a question, which is, how do you think about this in those industries that are not shopping cart intensive?
That's an interesting point of view, Jonathan. And Steph Curry is what do they call him, the silent assassin. Doesn't do much. He just hits a lot of threes and steps on the brand and shoots, half court shots.
Yeah,
it's crazy. And I do think the models that you really profile fit that kind of look and feel. But one of the things, the word I would use is engagement. So engagement KPIs need to be much more relevant and not just simply how many cart transactions do I have, and that's what I'm holding you to. We're going to have to start measuring engagement, on-site, off-site engagement. And then how are our engagement numbers going up? Look at abandoned carts, look at completed cart transactions, but also look at how you're engaging with that potential target off-site. And that's how we can start to get a better feel, because you're going to see a whole lot more shopping. And the reason why is over the last 3 years, people have been in an environment where they've spent more time online, right? And even in the world of B2B, people are non-committal now. They've actually gotten used to searching for things. They've gotten used to going to 3, 4, 5 different places to kind of find the deal or find the price, the quantity breaks, whatever they're looking for. They're willing to work a little bit harder because they've got space and time to do it. Because of this behavioral change, they're not necessarily, they're doing a whole lot more shopping, and not necessarily transacting, but there is value in the shopping. So what's key is when you have a site that is abundant with content and SKU coverage, be monitoring that behavior, monitoring it coming from upstream, and then monitor it coming from downstream. And then once you're doing that, start to create that point of view of, okay, we're getting more engagement off-site than on-site because we're getting shopped. And then how do you start to bring them back? Hey, thank you for visiting us today. We see you didn't load your cart. What can we do to earn your business? Those are the kind of automated initiatives marketers need to start to think about. Because at the end of the day, the more of those we get back to doing a conversion, the better chance we have of bubbling them up to our sales team to make them bigger, better, healthier customers.
Awesome. Tony, I'm going to make one comment and then I want to switch to your tributaries, data tributaries idea. So we actually did a study of 2 different distributors that would have a quote unquote failed initiative because only 1% was going through the shopping cart. What we found was that the customers that were digitally engaged, as measured by visits and also probably by pages visited, they bought way more offline than those who were not digitally engaged.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'll send you the study. It's pretty fascinating.
I would love to see that. I would love to see that.
So let's talk about this idea about data capture, data provisioning, tributaries. This is a really rich idea that you've teed up here.
Sure. So when I think of data provisioning, a lot of this has come to be because of the companies I deal with that are starting to decide, should we be involved in a marketplace or not? Right. So you've got, now I have to be thinking about as a CEO, as I'm sitting in front of the board, I've had input from my CMO or my chief digital officer. I've had some input from other folks within the business. And now I have to start to think about, okay, what do we do with data provisioning? Do we keep everything within our fiefdom and say, you know what, no, you can't have access to this? Or as I try to work through strategies is let's create a tributary to your digital ocean strategy. And what I mean by that is go fishing, right? Find all the tributaries out there that may have net new customer potential that you don't have coming directly to you, and start to parse out data based upon who you're sharing it with. Have very confined agreements so that they can't, take your business later or get in your pocket, but really provision these out like they're fishing holes, they're tributaries, because all tributaries lead to an ocean. So if you're fishing in one spot, and we'll call it fishing, we'll use the fishing analogy. If you're fishing in one spot and it's really hot and you're getting lots of new leads, lots of new customers, because you've provided a data feed or you provided some very specific connection to your intelligence internally, that's great. If there's a tributary that you're working in and you're not netting any new leads, you're not growing any business, and you've been very careful about splicing and dicing what you're sharing with them, but it's not yielding anything, you cut it off. And then you move on to the next watering hole that has more yield for you.
Okay, so what are fishing holes and watering holes in our world?
Well, I think fishing holes and watering holes in our world can vary. They can be marketplaces.
Okay.
And we know there are a lot of marketplaces out there. So you start to think about, do I want to participate in the marketplace? How many SKUs I want to put in that marketplace? What kind of data I want to share? Or it could be as simple as, are there buying groups? You're going to start to see more buying groups in this industry. And so what buying groups do you feel like you want to have a direct connection with? And do you want to curate that connection? Do you want to open it wide open? I think those are really couple of examples when you think about it. And even when you think about your SEM and what you're doing with Google, you might think about curating how you interact in that environment. You may say, hey, I need to be wide open with here's everything, every SKU, everything that matters. Or do you 80-20 that? And say, you know what, 20% of our SKUs that drive 80% of our profit, we're going to just focus on that. And we're going to curate it down. And we're going to curate our data feed down to that. So again, you've got these various tributaries, might be marketplaces, might be buyer groups, might be paid programs, and you bifurcate your feeds and data so that you can really monitor what's working, what's not, what you shut off. But the whole goal is to lead it all to your ocean. of new business and net new customers and new profit.
That's fantastic. Now, what about, could a manufacturer be one of these ponds or pools?
They could. A manufacturer could be a pool. And where that becomes even more interesting is if you are a channel partner of a manufacturer who also sells direct, then you're going to be thoughtful about what you're curating and that data to that pool or that fishing hole.
Okay. Fantastic. Let's talk about content. What we say is that content is not king, but actually emperor. Our product content is emperor. So how do you think about, first of all, how do you think about it? Where's it going? You know, if we're at a data 1.0 as an industry, where's it going? And what does that mean for how you think about this in this whole world that you're describing?
Okay. 2 words: accuracy and abundance. Accuracy and abundance is key. You want to have very accurate product detail and content for your site, for your marketing information, or even information that is being remarketed through your sales teams. It has to be abundant and it has to be very accurate, because those that shop with you or do business with you can smell a rat a mile away. They're going to know, this isn't, very well organized content. I'm looking for more information related to specifications. The dim weight's not in here, the size isn't in here, or there's certain things. I want to be able to see a 3D model. I want to be able to spin it and see, is this going to fit in my application? The content is the emperor, and it's so important that it's accurate. And when I say abundance, and here's why. If you're a distributor, you're going to get content from the manufacturer. So let's just say you are a channel partner of a manufacturer who has 300 channel partners. Everyone is getting the same information to put on their website and to use in all their materials. What I always try to communicate at the highest level of an organization, especially at the C level, please support your team in their efforts to create custom content. So you might get a grouping of content from a manufacturer. Now it's incumbent upon you to customize it to your business, to your brand, so that it's different. To have differentiated, accurate content makes it specialized. And that's why a customer will keep coming back to you, is because there's something unique you've done with the same information. It was interesting. Last night I was watching the Holiday Baking Championships. I don't know if you guys are into that, but they killed off my favorite my favorite character in my HBO Max show, and we all know what show that is. It happens in Catania, Italy. Anyway, what was interesting is they were talking about people. The contest was take a cake that's store bought, you bring it in, and then they scrape all the frosting off of it. That's a big thing that's been happening. So they scrape all the frosting off of it, and then they put brand new frosting and everything on it, but it's the same cake. You're like, well, why didn't you just make the cake? This is the same concept. You get a chunk of content from someone, and then you go and put it out to the world and think that's where you're done. No, take that content, scrape the frosting off of it, and redress that cake so it's unique to your business. It's unique to your customer set.
Hey,
I never stopped thinking about that. I can't even watch television and not think about distribution.
Yeah, that's funny, Tony, because it reminds me of something. I remember years ago, Partstown was one of the very first distributors to put 3D photos. I think they call it Part Spin on their site now. Yeah, and that's the frosting on the cake, because they're getting the images and the data and stuff from the manufacturers, but that frosting makes that cake so much more attractive. And I remember I was approached, I was in a marketing job by a company that offered that service, and they're like, one of their very first customers was Partstown, and they specifically mentioned that Steve Snower just had the vision to see what a differentiator that was. Is that an example of icing on the cake?
Perfect example. Another interesting example, Ian, is a company, Pasternak. So Pasternak has custom cable, right? Okay. Everyone's got cable. Everyone has, that are doing wire and fittings and all of that. But what's really cool about what Pasternak does is it's a custom cabler. that you can actually go to the app on their website and make a custom cable. Think about this. I can not only make a custom cable, but they can actually apply a part number to what it is that I made.
Wow.
That's next level. That's customization.
Mhm.
That is something you're not getting anywhere else. And I want to keep coming back to them.
That's the cable creator. I'm looking at it now.
That's
It's
the
really
cable
impressive.
creator. It is amazing, but you won't see that anywhere else. This is what I mean by custom content. I do want to back up a bit and go back to search, because there is something about the future of search that I want to make sure everyone is thinking about.
Tony, quick interjection, and then please continue. So continuing the cake theme, I heard about somebody who delivered their resume on a cake.
Oh,
yeah, I remember that.
Oh, I wonder if they got the gig. I hope they did.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I want anyone who's creative to make sure they get a gig.
Yeah.
But I wanted to go back because I talk about the future of things and the future of search. One of the things I want to point out is at some point, I'd love everyone that's participating in the podcast, go to CallawayApparel.com, CallawayApparel.com. This is where you're going to see what I would imagine for B2B will be a voice shopping capability. And why this is important is if you're in the field, let's just say you're lying down and you're in the field and you're up to your hands in something and you're not able to get to a computer, you're not able to type in anything, you can't even pick up your phone to really do work, to be able to say, hey, I've got a problem, I need a component, I need something to fix. Having a voice shopping capability can enable you to literally create a bomb, and I'll do it with your voice and have it purchased and have it transacted. So I think the future, again, is going to be search agents to help you through really complex searches. But I also think that voice shopping is going to be something to watch for the B2B environment moving forward.
That's very interesting. And it tracks with customer research we've done on shopping and buying, how people shop for things separately from how they buy. And we've asked about both. We are of the opinion that the voice ordering is going to get adopted faster than what our data says. I tend to agree. Okay, cool. Because we think it's going to hit an inflection point and it's just going to take off. It's not there yet, right?
Right. It's not. But adoption takes time.
I think also it combines well with the visual AI. So if you can look at something and then tell the voice agent, hey, identify what I'm looking at and the quantities and place the order, because they've got increasingly these overlays for certain types of machinery, or, if you can look at a product and identify it, because the product match often is easier done visually because the machine learning can actually take an image of the product. But then you have to place the order with voice. So it's really the combination of the two that, I don't know, maybe part of the ultimate solution.
Agreed.
Let's go back to your accurate and abundant statement. So if we look at the data 1.0 world, where people have some modicum of data on the vast majority of SKUs, is what you're saying now, hey, look, it's not just to have good data on your A's. You got to have, people are expecting good data on a deeper set than your A and B categories. Is that a fair statement?
It's a fair statement. So what's interesting is how you're sort of four-boxing, right? So if you go A, B, C, and D customers, A, B, C, and D your suppliers, A, B, C, and D your data, your content. So if you've got content that only drives D customers because it's just table stake content, okay, great. Customers that tend to convert as a C customer, their second and third time buys, study that content. Why did they buy it again? Was it because it was opportunistic, or you just had the inventory, or you had the price breaks and quantity breaks they wanted? But the content keeps them coming back. And so what is the content improvement you need to do with those C customers? Now, if they become A and B customers, do they care as much about the detail, or do they care more about the accuracy of pricing, quantity, availability, some of these other things, and the content associated with that? So when you're looking at abundance and accuracy, always make sure to look at how to define your content strategy by customer type.
Very interesting. Wow. And when you look at the best practices in curating content today and getting content, is it a combination of we've got third party getting us mass content and we've got an in-house group, really tailoring the 10% that forms 90% of the revenue? Is it getting it from a buying group? How do we get good content today? What is the approach you take?
So as I talked about having data lakes for customer understanding, business intelligence around the customer insight and the customer engagement. Well, we also should have a data pool for content. And in that environment, you're going to better understand, okay, here's the kind of content that's converting well on site. Here's the frequency. Here are the customer types that seem to convert well around this content. And then this is how we repurpose it. So let's collect all the content that we're going to get that's table stakes content. And then let's start to understand of that content, what is going to help us convert more and convert at a more higher GP, and then have an internal team that's actually working with it. So this is where a combination of AI and a combination of real life people working through it. Because I always tell folks, AI is extremely helpful. It's like adding, some real good juice, some pyrotechnics to your game, but you still need to do some hand-to-hand work, hand-to-hand combat. So when you're dealing with content, you want to hyperdrive how much is coming in, separate it, and then from there, have people really working with it and writing it and really ensuring that it is exactly what the customer types are looking for. And at the C level, if you're talking to a CEO that says, geez, you've got people that are just, updating content, well, that's the game. You want great content. You want it to be accurate. You want it to be abundant. When we talk about DigiKey, it's not about just the SKU level that they carry. It's the detail in the content. You can go to a part information page or a part detail page at DK, and it's abundant. That's what you have to have. That's the fit and rigor you have to have around your content.
When we think about the range of topics we've covered here, very richly, by the way, UX, capturing data, content, search intelligence, how does this feed into sales enablement, which is really the end game, right?
Yeah. There are a couple of interesting things about sales enablement. I think you always hear the phrase because of COVID, right? It changed everything. You're no longer, going into offices as frequently and getting a chance to get in front of a decision maker. So much of your ability to grow an account has to be related directly to the digital engagement, because you have no idea what's going on. Even as things have opened up significantly and people are traveling and people are going to trade shows, you're still not as active as they've been in the past. For the past 100 years in sales, you've been able to go and shake someone's hand and carry a bag, right? You just go from the hotel room to breakfast straight to the office. So it's so important that all of this information is being developed to create a mosaic. I love working with sales organizations that are embracing the mosaic approach, where they say, you know what, we have 100 leads this month. And of course, someone says, well, 100 leads. Well, hold on a minute. We have a dossier on each one of those people. We know exactly how they have searched on our site. We know how they've engaged with us. We know the products they've purchased. We know the frequency that they purchased them in. We know when they did it. We have all of these points of light that start to say these 100 customers look like our best customers. They're great on their GP. They're very loyal. They're frequent. Their behaviors. Go get them. So the sales enablement now requires a lot more connectiveness with the digital strategy, because one person can't talk to 30,000 people, right? You got to have a one-to-many strategy. So what's great is you use all of the assets that we've talked about, how you've handled your search, how you've handled your user experience. What's great with a mosaic strategy, you're going to know if that customer was happy, was treated well, or wasn't treated well. And you have all of this information in front of you, literally in a file, a digital file and you'll say, okay, now I can outreach to this customer and I know everything as much as I possibly can about them and close the deal or move them up a bit. They might be a C customer and we can say, hey, based upon our experience with you, here's what I know. And what else can we do to serve you better? How can we grow our business together? And once they have that, they're enabled. You know, what's going to be interesting moving forward is we have a lot of systems, right? We have CRMs, and it's still work in progress for a lot of companies. They don't have 100% adoption in their CRM. They don't have 100% understanding of their price books. You know, guys are still cutting deals on the side. You know, these things are still happening. So institutionalization of processes and business practices and how they tie back in the digital are going to be really important in the future. Really important. I think the sales leadership of the future is extremely going to be the potential is bright. It's extremely bright if the digital aspect can be tied in a mosaic manner to the sales operations.
Which is a big contrast from how most distributors do it today, right? I mean, they're really managed as separate channels.
Right. They are managed as separate channels. They have to start to come together because, again, we can't have fiefdoms and be successful, right? This is my kingdom here. It's my kingdom here.
Yeah.
And these kingdoms don't come together. There has to be, I got to be trite, but there's a village around this. I look at companies as though they're sentient beings. I've had CEOs say, I hadn't really thought of it that way, but they are. We have to care for them. We have to feed them. We have to give them everything they need to be healthy, thriving, and successful, to contribute, right? So if you've got one part of a sentient being that isn't working well together, that's not going to work. It's not going to be a healthy entity. So
or attacking each other in the case of digital and sales sometimes.
They can't attack each other.
Right.
You ruin the business.
Right. Good. Hey, so we have a question here. It says, Tony, Frank Ford here. A few questions as we are building out our team at Dice Entertainment Group, which we briefly discussed from San Diego to Denver. Is this someone you met on a flight, maybe?
Wow, that's fantastic. Frank's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm on a lot of planes, guys, and I make sure I remember the people I interact with.
Well, he certainly remembers you. So through all of the organizations that you are involved with, how can you tell which team cultures work best? What tells you that a culture is poor? And what does a positive team culture look to you like? And finally, what actions might enhance a team's culture? So you made a big impression on Frank, Tony, and he wants to know, can you tell if a culture is good and how do you build one?
Wow, Frank, thank you so much for your question. And thank you for continuing to, interact. And even from a flight from to and from San Diego, I appreciate it. This is a fantastic question because it does tie in well with everything we're discussing. So I'm also a DISC partner. So I do a lot of work with DISC assessments.
Yeah.
A lot of work with DISC assessments. In fact, before I interact with a CEO, I have them take an assessment. So then I better understand how I'm going to meet their expectations and they understand how they're going to meet my expectations. And so as Frank's talking about is how to build a team. I actually just completed an interesting engagement for a CEO that asked the same question. Do I have the right people in the right seats? And are we a healthy organization culturally? So I actually took them through a series of DISC assessments, each individual executive in the business, from sales to marketing to BD. They've all gone through this, and I mapped them all. So imagine mapping all of the business leaders and saying, okay, here's where they all sit. Is one dominant? Is one an influencer? Is one a steady? Is one a conscientious? Where do they sit? And what was fascinating is they had a clump, pretty much 80% of their business leaders were all dominant. All of them, the whole organization tilted in one direction. So the strategy from that point was, okay, as we look at the health of the business, where you want to go, how you want to get there, let's figure out how to get more variety, not only out of those that are in that dominant space, but what other talent would you need to add in to ensure you've got a healthy, robust culture with the right people in the right seats, doing the right things and working well together? So to Frank's questions, it's just simply understand at a granular level what each leader believes in, how they operate, how they work with others, and start to really mold and manage that. And there are things like DISC assessments, working with Think, where we actually get in there and we understand what that is. We've found that it's helped with sales. We have found that it's helped with recruiting. We have found that it has helped a company be successful. If I get in there at a advisory standpoint, I say, hey, you're doing great at marketing, you're doing great at operations, but you've got an unhealthy environment, or you don't have the kind of environment you wanted. I'll get in there and we'll start to conduct a lot of assessments to better create the kind of holistic, healthy environment a business needs.
And to Frank's point, it's a key part of building the right culture is having a balance on your team and not being all drivers or dominant personality types, right?
Yeah. It's today's economy requires variety.
Right.
That's a phrase that I make sure to share.
Excellent. Tony, this has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's really been a great discussion.
Thank you for having me.
Tony is absolutely one of the digital cognoscenti.
Yeah, there's no question. And marketing cognoscenti, and just a fantastic individual. I did put your email address on here, Tony. I didn't ask for permission. I hope that's okay.
Oh, no, that is wonderful. If folks have questions or you just want to connect with me one-on-one, and I'm happy to have conversations with you. I sit on boards as far as New Zealand, so my hours are pretty wacky. So happy to connect. You bet.
And so for you podcast listeners, Tony's email address is tony@thinkb2b.com. Think is spelled with a C, THINC. So Tony@think with the C, B2B.com. So if you hold on for just a minute, I'll describe some upcoming shows. In January 11th at noon Eastern, 9 p.m. Pacific, we're doing a discussion panel of distribution leaders on ensuring successful CRM adoption to drive sales. So if you've got some curiosity or challenges around CRM adoption, you can listen into a panel of distribution leaders who have struggled with the same issues and in many cases come to some solutions. That's brought to you by our good friends at Proton.ai. That's Proton.ai. And then on January 18th, we have our legendary webinar, State of E-commerce and Distribution. It's based on surveys from hundreds of respondents about best practices in wholesale distribution. That's brought to you by Epicor and by Optimizely. Epicor and Optimizely are also great partners of the show, and we're so glad to have the support of those two sponsors for our 13th annual State of E-commerce in Distribution webinar. Jonathan, it's been great working with you again today.
Mutual, Ian. This was good fun.
It sure was. Tony, thanks again. Thanks. We really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And thank you to the audience for joining us today. Much appreciated.
Awesome. All right, everybody. We'll see you next time on the Wholesale Change Show. Thanks for joining us today. Bye now.